Good morning, everyone, to our briefings for today. I'm glad so many of you could join us virtually for the St. Louis Regional Chamber's COVID-19 briefing with our elected officials in Illinois and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. With Illinois' special legislative session wrapped up, it's important to know how the legislature is responding to ensure businesses continue to open safely and confidently. I'm Tom Chulik, President and CEO of the St. Louis Regional Chamber. And before we begin, I'd like to take this moment to thank all of our workers who are on the front lines during the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, yesterday, a message and a statement was made on the region's recent civil unrest. It was sent to all the St. Louis Regional Chamber members and posted on our website. The Regional Chamber's response to this national and regional response to George Floyd's death and others, and a call for businesses to get involved in order to listen and develop actionable and sustainable solutions. This is the first step of the Regional Chamber's response. I'd like to take a moment and to have a prayerful moment for peace and leadership. Thank you. And today, I'm very excited that we have four tremendous elected officials who will give a recap of the special legislative session, followed by an update from DCEO. And to begin our briefing, Assistant Majority Leader Jay Hoffman and Senator Christopher Bell, Representative Latoya Greenwood, and Representative Monica Bristow, by the way, who all won Chamber Champion Awards last year for their work during the 2019 legislative session, will share their thoughts about the special session in Illinois. Following their update, Jonathan McKee, the Assistant Deputy Director of the Regional Economic Development at DCEO, will discuss DCEO's grants and other programs that can help Illinois businesses. I'd like to thank all of them for all their leadership and support for our region and for taking the time to join our virtual meeting this morning. So now it's my pleasure to pass the baton to Austin Walker, Vice President of Public Policy and the Regional Chamber. Austin, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. And thanks to everybody participating on the call. If you have a question you'd like answered by any of our speakers, please just use the chat feature in Zoom and we'll do our best to get to your questions. Closed captioning is also available for these briefings, so also feel free to use that feature as well. Before we get started, I'd like to take just a sec to thank the St. Louis Regional Chamber's 2020 public policy sponsors. Their contributions support all of our policy programming throughout the year. Now, I'd like to introduce Assistant Majority Leader Jay Hoffman. Leader Hoffman represents the 113th district that includes Belleville and Granite City. Leader Hoffman's also the captain of the Illinois team for the St. Louis Regional Chamber's Bi-State Softball Showdown. We also hope to see Leader Hoffman field another impressive team, maybe next year, probably not this summer, after the pandemic, of course, but please welcome Leader Jay Hoffman. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Austin. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, I hope we do have a successful team this year if anybody ever gets to play again, right? Let me just kind of briefly go through our legislative session, which ended about a week ago. It was a very intense session. It lasted 4 days. We had not been in session since the executive order shelter in place was signed by Governor Pritzker, which was towards the beginning to middle of March. And I know Senator Belt, Representative Greenwood, and Representative Bristow would probably agree that it was certainly a surreal atmosphere and a surreal session. We actually held our House session in the Springfield Convention Center, the Bank of Springfield Convention Center, in order to be able to adequately social distance. The Senate actually, and Chris can address this, actually did meet in the Capitol building, and it was difficult logistically because we weren't in the same building, and dealing with negotiations with the Senate as well as the governor's office was a bit daunting. In the session, we dealt with several items, mostly emergency items that are a result of COVID-19. Obviously, we needed to pass a budget for the state, and that was passed. It essentially is spending levels the same as the previous fiscal year or current fiscal year that we're in, with the understanding that we may have to come back or we probably will have to come back in the future to make adjustments as a result of the COVID-19 effect on the economy. In addition, we passed several emergency pieces of legislation, first dealing with the workers' compensation system in Illinois. And this was an agreed bill process that I was lucky enough to be a part of. And in Illinois, when it comes to workers' compensation items, as well as unemployment insurance items, we made the decision that we were going to work in an agreed fashion. What that means is there were representatives from business and representatives of labor at the table, as well as representatives from each of the four caucuses in the governor's office. So the House Democrats were represented by me, the House Republicans by other gentlemen, the Senate Republicans, and the Senate Democrats. And I was part of the workers' compensation agreed bill process, as well as the unemployment insurance agreed bill process. And I can just go through those two very quickly. And when we say agreed bill, that means that labor as well as business and their representatives have to agree, or we weren't going to move a piece of legislation. Thankfully, we got an agreement from all parties, and the bills passed in a huge bipartisan manner. With regard to workers' compensation, obviously there are some unique circumstances that are needed to be addressed as a result of the virus, and individuals who at work may contract the virus and get ill from COVID-19. The governor had previously, through the Workers' Compensation Commission, had put forward a rule that indicated that there would be a presumption for all, quote, essential workers that if you were an essential worker and you developed an illness from COVID-19, that it would be presumed that happened at work. There was a similar, I believe, rule that was passed, or executive order is in place in Missouri, but I don't believe was near as expansive. I believe it dealt with first responders as well as healthcare workers, basically, that the governor of Missouri signed as an executive order. That rule that the governor and the Workers' Compensation Commission put forward was attacked in the courts by individuals, and it was found by the courts that he didn't have that power to issue, or the Workers' Compensation Commission didn't have the power to do that rule. Therefore, it was left to the legislature to pass or not pass something concerning a workers' compensation and someone who receives an illness as a result of the COVID virus. In a nutshell, basically what we passed and what was agreed to by business and labor is if you are an essential worker in Illinois, which would obviously be a healthcare worker, first responder, could be a construction worker who is deemed essential, or a person who works in manufacturing or a food processing plant, and you were to contract COVID-19 and has a resulting illness, it would be presumed that it happened at work. However, there are very specific items that could rebut that presumption, and business help negotiate those items with labor so that the presumption would be rebutted. In other words, it could be shown that what didn't happen at work. If you provided the proper PPE, it would be rebutted, and there wouldn't be a presumption. So that's it in a nutshell, and that passed overwhelmingly through the House and the Senate in a bipartisan fashion. The second item that needed to be addressed in an emergency is obviously, and I know Missouri and every state is seeing an unprecedented amount of unemployment. The trust fund in Illinois, which is federally regulated, had a significant balance prior to the job losses as a result of COVID-19. The estimates by the Illinois Department of Employment Security are that between $8 billion and $14 billion there will be a deficit as a result of the unemployment benefits that will be paid out as a result of the pandemic and the economic loss as well as the unemployment. There were several items that the federal government had required us to pass in order to be eligible for certain federal reimbursement to the tune of $2.1 billion. They were items such as getting rid of the 1 week waiting period before you got or received compensation. We passed that. We also passed a provision that said that the experience factors concerning unemployment would be shared by all businesses as opposed to just an industry that may be harder hit as a result of this pandemic. That was a requirement of the federal government in order to receive the amount of $2.1 billion and an extension of weeks of benefits on top of that. So that also was an agreed bill process, business and labor. I represent the House Democrats. We came to an agreement that overwhelmingly passed the House and the Senate. In addition, we were in a position where we had to pass what is called the hospital assessment in order to make sure that reimbursement for Medicaid from the federal government and the assistance regarding Medicaid from the federal government continued. Our previous hospital assessment, I believe, passed 2 to 3 years ago. We had to pass something here in Illinois in order to make sure our hospitals were receiving adequate compensation for Medicaid services and that we received the matching amounts from the federal government. That was passed. And finally, we passed legislation that would provide a mechanism for distribution of some of the COVID dollars that are coming from the federal government. I believe most of that's going to be run through DCO. So the individual from DCO may want to address that. And we passed a capital bill, our extension of our capital bill with needed projects so that when we do get out of this pandemic, there'll be jobs and economic opportunity. Part of that funding for that capital program was cleanup and changes to the Chicago casino bill that was passed a year ago. There was an agreement between the mayor of the city of Chicago and the governor, and we ultimately passed that so that we can move forward with a Chicago casino, which will provide funding for a capital bill that will provide jobs and economic opportunity throughout the entire state. So that's in a nutshell what we did in the 4 hectic days that we were in legislative session about a week and a half ago.
Well, Leader Hoffman, really appreciate it. That's a fantastic update. And as usual, I got time for about one question. What's next for the Illinois General Assembly? Will there be a more productive veto session in the fall, do you think?
Well, I think it's probably likely, although there isn't a time that is specifically set, it's probably likely we're going to have to be back prior to the fall veto session. Maybe not, but I think we're going to have to address some of the issues that we couldn't address in this last legislative session because of it's the unknown, the future, and we don't know how long this is going to hang around us, how our economic recovery is going to move forward. We now in Illinois are in phase 3, which I know it's different, phase 1 or phase 3, phase 1 in Missouri and phase 3 in Illinois, just different phases the way that the different states have categorized them. Phase 3 has retail open, manufacturing is continuing, construction is continuing, bars and restaurants can have outdoor seating, not indoor seating yet. And we actually I got my hair cut this morning, so that's a good thing. It was getting a little long. So you can get your hair cut, and there are some other like individual workout activities if you have an individual trainer. But we're going to steadily work to hopefully towards phase 4, which is a much more robust opening of our economy. So in short, I think we're probably going to have to go back. If not, it would be good news because we would have turned a corner not only on the pandemic, but also on our economy.
Well, Leader, thank you very much for joining us. And your haircut does look much sharper than mine. I got to get that done. But appreciate you being here with our members this morning and your support for the business community during, especially the past few months and all you're doing in the legislature. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You bet. So up next is Senator Christopher Belt. Senator Belt serves Illinois' 57th Senate District, which encompasses communities in St. Clair and Madison counties. In the Senate, Senator Belt serves as the Vice Chairperson on the Education Committee. Please welcome Senator Christopher Belt.
Good morning. Good morning. Everything Leader Hoffman said, I echo those sentiments. The budget, the whole thrust of the budget was health and economic. Get us through this two-headed monster of the health and economic crisis that we face. I'm proud to say that this budget is a stepping stone towards financial recovery. It provided additional resources for the underserved communities that have been hit hardest by COVID. And hopefully it will address some of the disparities that have always existed. Now, again, we know that we were dealing with a pandemic. Then it came the economic crisis, and we're trying to mitigate both. As Lee Hoffman said, we're in phase 3, which, and hopefully by on June 27th. Hello.
We still hear you, Senator.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm on my end. It says the video has stopped. The host has stopped the video. So hopefully on June 27th, we'll be able to phase 4, and more businesses will be able to reopen, and we can get that benefit of those businesses opening. I always say that, to have businesses do well means that the local economy is doing well, which means hopefully that the state is doing well. Again, I echo the sentiments. Leader Hoffman did a phenomenal job of recapping our time at the Capitol last week. But there's a couple things that I would like to go over. We were able to pass some legislation that's going to the governor now, just to allow Illinois to be able to serve mixed drinks curbside. That was big, and that it'll help the. They're saying I'm breaking up. Okay, can you guys hear me?
It is a bit better right now.
Okay,
Yes,
it's
sir.
better right now. Okay. Just let me know. I don't know what you heard or what you didn't, but we were able to get legislation passed, going to governors just be signed into law. Legislation that allowed Illinois to be able to serve mixed cocktail drinks, allow you to take drinks away from an establishment,
Senator,
all that. Yes.
Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. I think you are breaking up a little bit more, certainly on my end. So I'm going to have one of our team send out a number, I think, to call in, and I think that will help out. But we want to hear what you have to say. So,
okay.
All right. So let's get back to Senator Belt in just a second and bounce over to Representative Latoya Greenwood, if we could. In office since January of 2017, Representative Greenwood represents the 114th District, which encompasses East St. Louis, Scott Air Force Base, and parts of O'Fallon. A lifelong resident of East St. Louis, Representative Greenwood previously served as a city councilwoman. Please welcome Representative Latoya Greenwood.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can for now.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me this morning. I cannot say it enough to my colleagues, Leader Hoffman and Senator Bell. Thank them for their partnership, as well as Representative Bristow. Leader Hoffman once again gave an excellent recap of the things that we were able to accomplish in session. And some of the highlights for me included increased funding for Medicaid, unemployment, hold on, I'm getting feedback. Some relief for our people suffering through unemployment, as well as funding for public health care. We did do some legislating that we're able to proceed in November with the election process, legislative terms of relief to Illinoisans across the state. It was very important that we were able to pass a budget, and like Leader Hoffman said, we will probably do some amendments or tweaking to that. But I was just, I've been very satisfied with that we were able to pass a budget and ensure essential services to the people of Illinois, especially the people of the 114th district.
Thank you, Representative. So I know that one of your passions is education.
Yes.
How are schools in Southern Illinois adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic, and how are they impacted by the recently passed budget?
So I've talked to several superintendents within the 114th district as far as toward the end of school year, and some of them are wrapping up. I believe this week will be their final weeks, and how the e-learning and online learning aspect went. What we know, what we knew before, and what we certainly were faced with because of this pandemic is about the inequities that are representative in education. And so there were some districts who had access to technology. There were some districts that did not. And so we were able to really dig into that during our work groups that were established as a result of the pandemic. And so we were working in consultation with the State Board of Education and working with schools across the state to accommodate for remote learning and to codify graduation requirements for this year. And additionally, we'll work with ISB to ensure that students and teachers meet their requirements. We don't know when school will be up and running to where we think it's back to normal. And so this is just because of the pandemic, it's an ongoing and ever-changing look at the way we develop policies surrounding education.
So the Jackie Joyner Kersey Community Center in East St. Louis is one of the testing centers in Illinois. And you were just there recently with Governor Pritzker. How is testing going in the Metro East, and what's the General Assembly doing to ensure widespread testing in Illinois?
Yeah, we were very thankful to the governor for working with us and opening an additional testing site in East St. Louis. The JJK Center was going a little slow because I believe location had something to do with that, but I believe that create access to testing information and resources to residents within the Metro East area has been a top priority for not only myself, but as well as for my colleagues. And so I'm proud to say we have 2 testing sites in East St. Louis. We have several in Belleville. We have a couple that are located in Cahokia, Granite City. And so I think we work very well as a team to ensure that the residents in the Metro East districts have the resources that they need for testing.
One more question. So what are your thoughts on the Restore Illinois plan? What have you been hearing from your constituents and businesses in your district?
Well, the the Metro East legislators did produce or did send a letter to Governor Pritzker prior to moving to phase 3 about our area opening up on May 15th, moving us to the next phase, which was phase 3, which we're in now, but we were requesting to be moved up earlier based on the data and information that we have received from our county and local health officials. The feedback that I've received from businesses and from constituents in my community were just that it was based on small businesses. No one wanted to continue to go or to remain closed. And they had developed plans to implement to address the issues for our small businesses. And so I was hearing a lot from small businesses ready to open, ready to get back. One in particular was the drive-in up in Belleville, Illinois, and myself and Leader Hoffman and Senator Belt did work with him along with the governor's office to assist him in being able to open and drive-ins being able to open. And so it was just situations and hearing from business owners like that and trying to reach out to the governor's office and staff to come up with solutions. And we are going to continue to do that now.
Well, Representative, we really appreciate those efforts to help businesses reopen safely. Yeah, that's our top priority here at the Chamber. So thank you for everything that you're doing in our region and Springfield. We really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I like your haircut, Jay. If he's still on.
It's very sharp. I hope he's still on. I was giving a shout out to Senator Belt to see if he was able to rejoin us.
Yes, I'm here.
Senator, we could hear you. Apologize for the technical difficulties today. Apparently, everyone's on Zoom call. So.
Okay. So, in recapping what I was trying to say earlier, this whole pandemic is a two-headed monster. Obviously, we're dealing with the public health crisis. Because of the public health crisis, we went into the economic crisis. And what I'm most pleased about with our special session in Springfield is that we were able to create a budget that we believe was a stepping stone towards financial recovery. We made sure that it provided additional resources to underserved communities that have been hit hardest by COVID-19, and hopefully it will address the disparities that have always existed. One of the things that I'm proud of, again, is the legislation that we did on to spur business up. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. It's a little bit muffled, but we can actually make out what you're hearing, what you're saying. But it seems like if you move maybe a little closer to the mic, that might be helpful.
Okay. All right. So House Bill 2682. It made various changes to the Liquor Control Act, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It waived the late fees for state liquor license. It authorizes the deferral of fees for state liquor license and provide for automatic renewal of state liquor license. And in addition to all those things, it allows the retail license to prepare and sell cocktails and mixed drinks for the off-site consumption. This is big for small businesses, our bars, our restaurants in Illinois,
again, as we stated before, that have been hit really, really hard because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This was designed to help them spur economic, more economic money and a way to get businesses going stronger. So we're really proud of that. In regards to one of the questions you asked Representative Greenwood, you know, again, the Metro East legislators, our downstate coalition, we did indeed put a letter together and we sent it to the governor and his administration, just asking him, just looking at the science and his phase out, his 5-phase rollout. We were making the argument that we were in phase 3 by May 15th. And our argument was that we didn't have to wait to the end of the month in May 29th, to go to phase 3 based off the matrix. But nevertheless, we're here now. Businesses are opening up. I rode through Belleville this past weekend. I saw a lot of people outside dining, pursuant to phase 3. And so that business, we want to continue to open up. Again, when businesses do well, the local economy does well. When the local economy is doing well, the state is doing well. And so we got to make sure that we continue to spur on businesses, be an aid for businesses, a resource for businesses, to continue and try to get through this COVID on the other side of it. And every business that existed prior to COVID, we want to make sure that it exists during and post-COVID. So that's our goal.
Thank you, Senator. You advocated for the passage of Senate Bill 1863. This is the vote by mail bill. For those that are unfamiliar, what is the vote by mail? What is vote by mail, and what can Illinoisans expect in the fall?
The vote by mail legislation is simply anyone who voted in the primary in the last election will receive an application to receive a vote by mail application. And we understand that that we're in a pandemic, and some people are not comfortable going the traditional way, going into the polls to vote. Vulnerable communities, older people, African Americans with comorbidity rates and higher comorbidity rates and other issues, they're just not comfortable going in the traditional way to a voting establishment. And so what this says is only for the November federal election, it sunsets afterwards, that you will have you don't have to do anything, but you will receive a ballot application by mail. Fill it out, send it in, then you will get an actual ballot for the election to fill out, and you can vote by mail. You do not have to vote by mail. You can receive it, and the choice is still yours to do. But, you know, what we felt like is you shouldn't have to make a decision between your health to vote. Both are utterly important, and we want you to take part in the democratic process. So we're just really, what this bill does is to provide an option to those people who want to take advantage of it. And I really think it's the right thing to do in a pandemic such as what we're dealing with right now.
Senator, I want to at least touch on this. It's the elephant in the room. It's weighing heavy on everybody in the region. You know, the events that are unfolding in Minneapolis, across the nation, in our region. Do you have any thoughts that you could share with our members?
Well, absolutely. I'm the Senate Black Caucus chairman. We put out a press release yesterday, and they'll be doing a press conference today, I think at 2:30 up in Chicago. In terms of what's going on, it's tragic. Our stance is that we're calling on our colleagues to stand in support of what's going on. And again, this is not to cast any aspersions or any, put law enforcement in a negative light. There are really good, the vast majority of police officers do their job. They put their lives on the line day in and day out. That's not the case. What this is really about is rooting out the bad actors that make everyone look bad. And it's bigger than just police officers. It's really an examination of the criminal justice system. I mean, if you look at the recent events in the last few months, you had a jogger that was shot and killed, and only when the video came out was charges brought forth. The whole deal with George Floyd, you only have one officer that's been arrested, and that wasn't an immediate arrest. That's just within the last couple days. There's strong opinion that the other three should be arrested as well. They were complicit. They were compliant. If you're going to do this job, you have to be to serve and protect everybody and not pick and choose. And so, obviously, no one condones the looting. No one condones the violence. From everything that we understand, there's outside elements that's spurring those things on, and that's not the way that you protest. But at some point, as you stated, we have to look at the elephant in the room, and we have to really have those deep, uncomfortable conversations about race. You look at these communities throughout the nation. You look at communities like Illinois. They've been, East St. Louis, and there's disinvestment that went on. It's been forgotten about. There's food deserts. There's healthcare issues where there's disproportionate impact on healthcare. There's a technology divide. I mean, what Corona did was really, besides the obvious, it really exposed what's going on in this country. You look at the healthcare, the comorbidity. People aren't just living this way just to do it. And so we really, as legislators and as community leaders, we really have to address that. And so, again, we don't condone the violence. We don't condone the looting. All of that is wrong. But at the same time, we cannot lose focus on what the issues are. And that's the fact that a man died with an officer's knee on his neck. And there has to be some type of connection to the crime and to the punishment. And I think that's what the outcry is really about.
Yeah, Senator, I think the chamber would agree with all of that, and thank you for sharing that. And just know that the business community is at the top of mind right now, especially in public policy, looking at issues that'll bring about more racial equity, economic equity. So we appreciate everything that you're doing in your partnership going forward, as we continue to tackle these big challenges. So we really appreciate you being with us today, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now joining us is Representative Monica Bristow. Representative Bristow serves the 111th House District, which encompasses Alton and Bethalto. In office since December of 2017, Representative Bristow is the vice chairperson of the Opportunity and Equity Committee. Prior to serving in the Illinois House, Representative Bristow was president of the Riverbend Growth Association. Please welcome Representative Monica Bristow.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on here. I think my fellow legislators covered pretty much about the legislation. It was an incredible experience. It was only my third spring session, and I really hope we don't see anything like it ever again. However, a whole lot of work went into setting up the Bank of Springfield Center. We were all 6 feet apart and kept our masks on, and got a whole lot of good legislation through. And that legislation came about by the working committees that we had, the working groups. They weren't committees. And we did that all by Zoom calls throughout the spring on a very regular basis. I served on the Health and Human Services, the mental health care, local government, and economic recovery. And each of those working groups, every working group, came up with legislation that we thought should be in those omnibus bills that we passed during the session. I'm also going to compliment Jay's hair. He kind of looked like George Washington in session. I mean, there was a lot of white hair there, so he looks a whole lot better now. The thing that I probably focused on most was telehealth, and we put some telehealth kind of policies in place during the pandemic. I myself had several phone calls with doctors during this the COVID-19, and it works amazingly well. So we made sure that we put that through to where that will continue on in the months and years ahead. So I'd be happy to take questions as well.
Well, thanks, Representative. So first question is, as a former chamber executive, what impacts have you seen on businesses in your district, and what were some of your priorities during the special session to help them through the crisis?
Well, as I mentioned, the telehealth, but getting a budget that we can, that's fair, that we can live with. I believe it was Latoya, Representative Greenwood, that mentioned, and Senator Belt mentioned the letter that we sent to the governor. We as downstate legislators have worked together and have tried to bend the ear of the governor several times, and we have succeeded in several things. We asked originally to have the governor look at the state in different regions. We got that. Wasn't quite what we wanted, but we did get a regional basis. There's still several things that we're asking the governor for. I think one thing right now that I'm dealing with constituents is funerals, and only 10 people are allowed at a funeral. Now, well, if anybody that's been through a family member that's passed away, that visitation, that seeing those people and getting their support in a very hard time is very important. And the way it is right now, if you can go to Walmart or go to a restaurant now and seat 6 feet away, there's no reason why we can't get something in place for funerals and funeral homes. So that's one of my priorities. And then hopefully with the capital bill that we expanded and put some things and we can get some more people to work and get the economy moving. I think we're all in contact with our mayors and listening to their concerns. We got quite the mountain to climb coming out of this pandemic.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you were on a number of working groups, including economic recovery. What were some of the solutions those working groups came to, and what policies were enacted that'll help with economic recovery?
Well, pretty much the budget helps us with that, with getting the economy going and making sure that we are taking care of people that need to be taken care of. It's going to be a tough budget, but we've got to keep going and keep helping those that need that help.
So what are your thoughts on the Restore Illinois plan? We've been, asking everybody about it. What have you been hearing from your constituents and businesses in your district?
That we need to move it along a little bit quicker. That we are Region 4, but we are still way ahead of the Region 1, and we need to make things different here than they are in Chicagoland. And that's as far as, we don't have the rates of COVID. Let's get businesses opened up a little bit more and expanded more than what they are right now.
Sure. And one more question. So Governor Pritzker yesterday, very publicly called out the president's rhetoric on protests during a call, calling it inflammatory. What are your thoughts on the current situation and, how the current administration in Illinois is doing?
Well, I think the whole situation is very sad, but I do think that Governor Pritzker is doing a great job. He is, I think, more in touch with constituents than our president is, as far as he knows what's going on. And he wants to see things righted rather than stirring the pot.
Well, really appreciate that. Hopefully everything and everyone will call for more calm and solutions to the problem,
Yeah.
the many problems. So really
I know that
appreciate you.
we had a very peaceful demonstration here in Alton yesterday, and that's what gets the point across.
That's exactly it. That's absolutely it. People expressing their First Amendment rights peacefully. Yeah, Representative, really appreciate you being here today and all the work that you're doing on behalf of the region in Springfield. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now joining us is the Assistant Deputy Director of Regional Economic Development at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Jonathan McGee. Assistant Deputy Director McGee is a social entrepreneur, civic leader, an external affairs expert with over 6 years of nonprofit, public sector, and social impact experience. Please welcome Assistant Deputy Director Jonathan McGee.
Thanks so much, Austin. I appreciate you all inviting DCEO to provide an update, and appreciate all of the legislators on the call. Thank you so much for all the work you all are doing, and thank you to all the businesses in the chamber here in the Metro East. As you know, this region is very important to DCEO, and just wanted to start with the top line update, which everyone's been talking about. As you know, last Friday marked Phase 3's beginning. On DCEO's website, you can find our guidelines and our toolkit to help businesses reopen safely. I did want to talk about that process a bit. Specifically, myself and my team, we led regional focus groups across the state, and specifically, we led focus groups here in the Metro East with the Southwestern Leadership Alliance, as well as with Kevin at the Regional Planning Commissions here in Metro East as well, and with small businesses. Who really gave us very, very thoughtful feedback that we incorporated, in addition to industry focus groups. So we know that there is a lot of feedback, and we're open to that, but we're also here to support you and support businesses as they think about what this looks like in Phase 3. The other update I want to provide is, as you all know, we've got about 15 days left for our fast track grant, and we really want to make sure that entities here in the Metro East are taking advantage of that funding. And then the other piece that I wanted to share with you all is, we are working on doing regional webinars around the EDA money. As you all know, that's $225 million across the 6 states here in the Midwest. And we want to make sure that Illinois can take advantage of that. And so my team and myself will be leading those, and really look forward to potentially working with the Chamber and other organizations here in the region to make sure we can get those resources out to you all. As you all saw, there was a big budget bill passed, and we are working on economic relief and recovery opportunities for businesses across the state, especially those businesses that may not open until later in the Restore Illinois plan. And so really just wanted to come and share with you all our top line items that we really got done as well. We've got out our hospitality grants, which we gave out $14 million across the state. We still have our downstate stabilization fund, which still has money in it. So I would encourage any municipalities and local units of government that have not applied for those funds for their businesses. We have money available in the pot, and we'll be potentially releasing our first round soon. And so want to make sure that you all are taking advantage of that. And really, I think last but not least, you saw that the Governor's Office, in partnership with DCEO, in partnership with IDES, released our Get Hired website, which, again, we want to make sure we're getting folks back to work. We want to make sure we're connecting employers to workers, and then we want to make sure that we're upskilling those workers. And so, a lot of our local workforce agencies will be looking for companies and businesses to apply for federal grant funds to ensure that they can train up their workforce for the job opportunities that are available. And so, we're really approaching our economic recovery from a three-pronged standpoint, and that's really looking at our workforce, looking at business attraction and expansion, as well as making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to do so, as well as our broadband grant that just recently opened too. So I'll stop there, Austin, and just wanted to say that I want to offer up myself as a resource, Jonathan McGee, and then also my team. And I know a lot of you all have been waiting for a while to see when we would get a representative down in that area. And I would like to say we had a position open. We are looking at candidates. And as soon as we can get that person in the door, we'll make sure we introduce everyone to them. But just wanted to kind of share those updates with you all.
Awesome. Assistant Deputy Director, really appreciate that. Fantastic update. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us and giving you that contact. So thank you as a resource, and that will wrap up our program for today. I want to thank everybody for joining today's COVID-19 briefing with Illinois leadership. I'm happy to see that our region's elected officials continue to collaborate and engage with the business community. As our region and nation begin a slow reopening, the St. Louis Regional Chamber remains committed to serving as a resource, convener, and advocate for our members, investors, and community partners during these challenging times. So please join us for Voices of the Region webinar on communicating on purpose with the CEO of Core Authenticity, who'll focus on foundational pillars of communication, as well as discuss communication variables and the roles of expectation, comparison, and competition. The Zoom meeting will be held tomorrow, June 3rd at 3 p.m. And please see our website for more details. Thanks again for joining our virtual meeting today, and our elected officials for being with us. This meeting is adjourned.